Welcome to Thematic Recreations, where we create and recreate buildings, landmarks, and objects from reality and fiction. I'm your host, Jack King. Today I'm going to be building a Taco Bell. Not a classic Taco Bell, but a modern Taco Bell. I'm basing this off of a few pictures I've got and the fact that I had Taco Bell yesterday. I wanted to include a food and a drink amenity, so I chose a medium so that I could have the same footprint that I needed in order for the building to work. The sides with the drive-thru have an interesting pattern, so right now I was trying to figure out how to get that to work with the building tools we've got available, as well as the window door. That was a little bit complicated because there's no proper window door. There's windows that are around the same size as the door, but not a door with a handle. I guess I could have made a custom handle for a window, but I didn't think that would look right. You can see me fiddling with the colors, but I ended up just choosing a dark and a light and then editing the colors properly in the end. That way I didn't have to mess with the colors each and every piece. Here I was having some issues with the building being properly selected over the top of the roof, which is something I try and achieve in all of my builds with multiple structures, that they're easily selectable. So I ended up going through and deleting and redoing a couple of the walls before I got too deep in order to make sure they were both clearly selectable. Here I'm trying to fiddle with the random rotation. It's a lot of people were requesting that it be added, but it's already in the game, but you can only use it on duplicated objects that you move manually, not with the axis controls. So it's there. It's just not easily accessible and usable on everything. This is what I was talking about earlier with the door. There's a windowed door, but it doesn't have the same windowed option as the rest of the windows. I can't select it and have an interior. It's just a flat color, which does create a little bit of differences with the actual windows and the door window. I ended up making those middle windows just regular flat because having the interior parallaxing just didn't look proper when the windows were that small. It just kept duplicating the interior space. I ended up changing the interior because that fast food interior didn't look proper with the modern Taco Bell aesthetic. So I changed it to, I think, one of the bar settings. And that ended up looking a little bit closer, a little bit dark, but closer. Here I'm starting work on the little wooden slats that are above the front and sides of the building. I was able to find that wood trim, and it ended up being pretty much exactly what I needed. So I ended up making one of the bars and duplicating it for each of the sides. The front side needed a little bit of editing, but most of that worked out pretty well. That front was the only part I could really see optimizing that I would really need to do if I edited it, because I could do 3 large wall segments instead of 9 of the smaller wall segments. That's really what I should have done. But hindsight's 2020. You know, I can always go back and edit it if I need to, if people have issues with the complexity. But with how simple this build is in particular, I doubt that it's going to be an issue. Here I'm just doing a little bit of editing, trying to get those sides of the wood to come a little bit closer inside instead of clipping through the wall. I did the same on the other with the windows here in a second, trying to make sure everything's not clipped into that brick wall. I did have to edit the supports in this because the others were horizontal, and with how thin these were, they needed to be vertical in order to actually look like they're attached properly. I ended up putting 3 of those little supports in order to get them to look proper. I don't know why Taco Bell decided to make these little awnings so small, but they did. So I ended up just making it as small as it would. I had to recolor it, but luckily it was a paintable object, so it ended up not being an issue. I was struggling a bit on this color to get it right. It was both saturated and dark, but it still looked tan, not brown. So I was struggling and going back and forth on that one to see how I could get it to look right. I'm glad I realized that the dropper was in this instead of me going to a color hex picker and then trying to paste it and see how it looks in game. I'm glad that they added that feature. It has saved me a lot of headache. With these gutters, there was no collector up top. I'm not sure how they have their roof set up to where it takes this, but I ended up just turning it sideways and sticking it inside the wall, and that ended up fixing the issue for the most part. I ended up duplicating the same piece on the bottom, shrinking it down, and angling it because there's no spout either. I just had to telescope it in to make it a little bit shorter, but that looks proper. Right here, I thought it was done, but something just didn't feel right. So I ended up going back and adding a couple more details, like adding lights on the outside, and I ended up recreating the logo and putting it on both the sides. Here, I really wanted that Z fighting covered up, but I ended up just putting the wooden trim on the outside and sizing it up, which is accurate to the I don't know what it is, a chimney on this. It's accurate to the actual structure. I ended up duplicating it and rotating it instead of building it out piece by piece. I had to do it again here because I accidentally selected one of the side pieces, but it looks a lot better not having to stare at that Z fighting the whole time. Here I wanted a 1 meter path on the non-walkable surfaces where the cars would go, and a 2 meter surface on the walkable areas. That way there's some sort of border around it, but it's not that obstructive. Right here is another place I could have optimized. I could have used a 2 meter square instead of a 1 meter square in order to build that, but I ended up going the easy route and using a smaller amount of pieces or a smaller amount of unique pieces rather than going for optimization. Here I did a cheeky little trick where I clipped the rock inside the ground to give different sized rocks instead of choosing different ones. For some reason in this game all the rocks are extremely huge, so I ended up having to do that clip trick a lot. Here I'm trying to find out how much I can scale that down with it without it distorting the spacing on the characters. I ended up settling on this, which is just one bar below. That way I can still size it down after the fact a little bit, but I ended up not needing to have to. Here's where I'm starting on the logo. The primitives in this game cannot scale far down as they can in Planet Coaster 2, which I'm very upset by. I understand the restrictions are there for a reason because you're not really working as detailed as you are in Planet Coaster, but I really would have liked that feature to stay because it makes creating more detailed things a lot more complicated. As you'll see later on, for the actual hitter of the bell, I needed a smaller sphere, and I ended up having to use a uh, semi. Oh, what's it called? It's like a sphere that's stretched out, an oblong sphere, but cut in half. I forget the name of it. If I watch, I could probably tell what it is, but I don't want to have to re-edit this audio clip. Here you can see the bell shape taking place. It's really simple shapes that make this up, so it didn't take too many. I think I calculated as like either 16 or 17 pieces, but the actual shape of the bell did not take as long as I expected it to, or to be as difficult as I expected it to. Here you can see that other trick that I used to get that. It only caused one issue when I was creating the lights, but I just ended up putting a second light to cover up the shadow of that protrusion, and it ended up working out just fine. I tried using it for the sphere up top, but it didn't end up working out, so I ended up taking the oval from the bottom and duplicating it and just having the top of it stick out. All I did here to create that outline was just to duplicate the outside objects, extrude them out a bit, and then make them slightly less than flush up against the tops of the others. It takes a little while to do so, but the end product is a nice, small, thin outline. I was rather happy with how the logo recreation turned out. I ended up having to copy it like that and then use that to duplicate it onto the front of the building after I moved it here. This little wave, I really wanted it to be light up. I don't think the original one is, but it looked like it needed to be. So I ended up just doing it out of these neon light strips instead of building it out of shapes, trims, or primitives. That way I could get that glow to it. And I did end up adding a lot more lights behind it in order to keep the text from being overshadowed by the light of the neons. Here I was getting a little bit frustrated with how the selection was working, so I ended up placing it back down, doing my blueprint trick, and then attaching all of those bottom pieces to the back of the structure in order to not create any interference with the back and the front of the building. Here are those lights I was talking about. I made sure to place them inside of the wood, that way they weren't protruding out, but it still illuminates through the mesh. I tried adding this to the ground, but it didn't end up looking good, so I ended up going with a smaller lamp on the top of the building. That way the sign looks properly illuminated. Here I'm just adding a few of those last details and fixing those selectable areas. That way it properly encompasses the building that's being selected. The last thing I ended up doing was raising up this roof slightly, just to make sure it was easier and to cover up those pipes at the end. Thank you for watching. I'll have the links and share codes in the description. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. If you want to see more videos like this, it lets me know you're interested, you like this content, and you'd like to see more of it. Thank you, and have a good rest of your day.